Hi, my name is Cece, and on behalf of Scrapbooks on Trial, welcome to another Tutorial Tuesday. In today's tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do a reverse resist technique using PanPastel on Pastelbord. And here are the supplies that you'll need to create today's project. For today's project, you will need the Pastelbord, some PanPastels, and I will list the colors that I'm using at the end of this video. Various soft sponges as well as tools or applicators. The Sunburst stamp by Penny Black, number 4236K. Some Versamark ink. The Create Today stamp set by Donna Downey, or any other sentiment stamp that you would like to use, as well as Jet Black archival ink. Spectrafix, which is a pastel fixative. So today, as you've noticed, I'm working directly onto my desktop surface. It's a surface that will wash off. We're using dry pastel, so it doesn't really matter, it will come off. But if you prefer, you could also use your craft mat. I wish you could feel the texture. This is kind of like a very light sanding paper texture, and that will grip the PanPastel really well. I'm going to start by layering down the colors for my sky. I'll be doing sort of like a landscape with a grouping of flowers. And I grabbed one of my sponges. These are called soft sponges, and I'll put the right spelling on the screen. These were made specifically for PanPastel by the people that actually makes PanPastel. And they sort of look like those makeup sponges, but they're not. They're actually made of a different fiber, and they work really, really well for PanPastel. So I will start by doing blues and greens. I'm going to start with my yellow, and I'm just taking my sponge, and I'm just like doing one quick swipe of that color. And I'm going to start on this side here. I want to give the illusion of the sun. And my canvas, or my pastel board, is going to have that painterly look. So I'm not concerned about doing something very even. Now, of course, we're working on a gray surface, so the colors will be muted a bit. And I like that effect. I really, really do. And I'll probably add some here at the bottom. Whoops, on the horizon line. A little bit here. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the blue, and the proper way to use these sponges is on that side here. Don't, some people are tempted to use it on the sides, but there's a seam right here in the middle. It's actually composed of, one sponge is actually two sponges glued together. So if you're using it on this side, you will see the line on your work. So I'm going to use this side of the sponge, and I'll grab a bit of blue, and I'll start incorporating the blue. Alright, so I've laid down the base coat for the sky. I'm going to seal that because I want to add more colors, but I don't necessarily want to mix my colors. I want the yellow to stay yellow, the blue to stay blue. So I'm going to give a base, a swipe of this pastel fixative, and the way to apply the fixative is don't spray over your work like this on a horizontal surface. You need to stand up your work and just do swipes of the fixative. You can use your heat tool to speed up the process of drying. It dries almost instantly with the heat tool. And you might see some ghost images of the flowers here in the background. That is because I was testing on the board and I only have one board at my disposal right now. So I do apologize for some of the defects in the background, but it'll all be good in the end. Okay, so now I want to add a little bit of pink to my sky. One thing I forgot to mention is if you feel that your sponge, because now I want to dip into my white. Now, because I've gone over some areas with this sponge, it's kind of like pinkish in look. So one thing to do is you can use your roll of paper towel and clean off your sponge, and you'll know when it's clean when none of the colors transfer onto the paper towel. So now I have no problem in dipping my sponge into the white without contaminating my PanPastel. Although if you do contaminate it, you can easily remove the color from the top of your little pot, so that's not a big problem. But I do want to lighten this up. I feel that my sky is way too dark, so I'm going to do that, and then I will give it a base a seal coat, and then I'll be back. So now I'm ready to stamp, and this is a very important step, that you seal your work before you actually stamp with the Versamark. So now I'm going to try to repeat the same pattern that I had previously made on the board. If not, oh well. Now I'm going to add a bit of the PanPastel in the middle of the flower. Let me just zoom in so you can see what's going on. So I have this tool here with the rounded shape, and these are perfect for small details. I have different shapes here. There's a triangular tool, sort of like an angular, a square, and a round tip. And these all have, you can buy the extra sponges for those. So I'm going to dip into my red. Alright, so what's happening here is the PanPastel, the Versamark will allow the PanPastel to grip to it and provide a darker image. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm cleaning off the edges of each of the flowers because I do have a fairly good amount of color in the middle and that shadow that I just did. But I do want to bring to the foreground the stamped image in the from the Versamark stamping. So I'm just cleaning off using a paper towel. And that also gives us a very nice shadow around the flower, which I like. Okay, so for the stems, I'm using another tool. You can use, for this part, you can use any tool that you have. I just happen to have a triangular tool right here, and I'm going to use a combination of the light green and the darker green. So I'm just going to put some PanPastel on the edges of my tool right here. And I'm going to go from the center and then bring the stem down. I'm going to reinforce that. Like this. I'm going to do a small one here. Oh, look at that. I love that. And one right here. Now I'm going to go in the darker green, and I'm going to do just a little bit of detailing on the side there. Just to redefine the flower. There you go. Like this. So. And then we're going to add the grass. Now the grass is a lot of fun. You can just like let yourself express yourself the way you want to. I'm going to use this tool here, and I'm going to do some grass first with the lighter green, and I'm just going to, you know, flick some grass patches, very uneven grass, all the way across the board. And that's also going to ground our flowers. Like this. And I'm going to use this tool. I'm going to do darker green. I'm going to try and hit the side of each of, let me just zoom in here. Just going to hit the side here of each of these grass bits. There, so we've got our grass at the bottom. It brings everything back to life. I quite like that. And I'm going to do something else. I'm going to take some white, and I'm going to add white in the center of each flower like that. Ooh, I like that. Just to give us a highlight. I'm thinking I want to add some of that white accent on little bits and pieces of the grass just to make them pop. I've got that going on. Now we're going to work on the clouds, and for the cloud I'm going to be using my big sponge that I had at the beginning. I'm just going to clean it up a little bit on my paper towel. And the last thing I want to do is I want to stamp the sentiment. What I ended up doing, and what I forgot to film, is how I stamped the sentiment right here. Let me zoom in. So to find the perfect placement for it, I actually made an imprint using the stamp-a-ma-jig. So with the imaging sheet and the jig, I stamped the sentiment, and then I took it and I sort of traveled it all across my canvas to see where the best place would be for it. And then I just put down the sheet, replaced my jig, and then stamped right there. And that is how I was able to get the proper placement for the sentiment, because I was using a rubber stamp. I quite like how it turned out. PanPastel will react differently on paper. Because the board is gray, it does have a different look to it. It's a much more subtle effect than what you would do on paper. So that's it. This technique is also shown on our make and take of this week. So if you want to try your hands at it, it's not going to be done on Pastelbord, it's going to be done on paper, but there is a repeat of today's make and take, or yesterday's make and take, on Thursday night, and Denise will show you how to do this technique. So I hope that you've enjoyed this, and if you have any questions or comments, as usual, leave them below, and I will see you next week. Bye!